Okay, so we are now live. And thank you firstly, Sada, for joining us this evening for the expert interview for December. It's a real pleasure to have you on, and thank you also for your patience with my random technology issues tonight. So before we get started, and just so that everybody knows where they can find you, if they want to follow you, if they want to learn more about what you're talking about, would you be able to just signpost us to where best to find you in terms of your website, the social media platforms that you're most active on, where they can find more info about you?
Yeah, sure. So thank you very much for having me, Jenny. It's a real pleasure to be here. So my website is sadayoga.co.uk. That's spelled S-A-D-A. You'll find most information on there, and I have social media platforms as well. So Facebook and Instagram, they're also linked to my website. If you want to search for them independently, then it's Sada Yoga UK.
Perfect. Okay, that's lovely. And I'm sure that there will be plenty of questions that people have following on from today. So yeah, absolutely reach out, message you, ask questions. That's what it's all about, really.
Yes.
So, okay. So before we kind of dive right into the juicy content of today's interview, do you want to give us a little bit of background and history about you and about, what's brought you to today, really?
Yeah, sure. So I'm from Weston, and I've been living on and off in Weston for my life. You know, I went away and came back and ended up settling here. And I've been teaching yoga for a couple of years now. And I met you through my yoga classes. And this is what I do full time. I'm very passionate about my work, and I really want to just share yoga with as many people as possible. I think that it's a really great practice that has a whole host of benefits, both body, mind, and spirit. And I think everyone should just get involved whenever you can, basically. So, yeah.
Yeah, I would wholeheartedly agree with that. And, I'm really, really pleased that we met through your classes. I think it's fair to say that even though there are many teachers of yoga, everybody has a really individual style with the way that they teach and the philosophies that they choose to embody, and they choose to kind of have running as a thread through their classes. And it's as important as working with a therapist to find the right personality for you, the right fit for you. And I think that the only way to do that really is by trial and error. It's probably worth saying that you teach various different styles of yoga as well, which I found really useful and beneficial for me, because you can kind of find the teacher that's right for you and then dip in and dip out of different types of yoga as well, instead of having to go to different teachers for different styles. Yeah,
that's interesting that you say that. And I mean, I agree with you wholeheartedly. I think that there is a teacher and a student for each teacher and each student, and when you kind of meet the right one, you just know. I also think that as a student of yoga myself, I always will be, throughout your practice, your preference will change dependent on where you are in your life. So, you might stay with a teacher for a certain amount of time and then get to a point and be like, okay, I need something else now. When you kind of create that awareness of what it is you truly need, you'll then maybe venture somewhere else and find someone else that can provide something a little bit different for you. But yeah, I think I do teach various styles, but they all embody the same intention, which is really to be present and learn and become aware of ourselves and who we are, and to feel comfortable in our own skin, and to feel comfortable in our human state, because sometimes it isn't comfortable being a human. So I'd like to try and allow people the space to try and feel comfortable in their own skin.
Yeah, and I think, now that you've said that, that really makes a lot of sense. It really resonates, actually, because I think sometimes what we think we need and what we actually need are two very different things, but we don't actually know it until we try it. And I'd always been very, very drawn to quite a dynamic style of yoga, always kind of, I guess, really felt that I needed to have like a workout from the yoga. Yeah. And then when I started coming to your hatha classes, I realized that actually it was the hatha that I needed, and not that hatha is not a workout, because it absolutely is. And some of the poses quite intense, but it was that more considered type of movement that actually mentally was much more beneficial to me. So yeah, I think you're absolutely right. Different types for different stages of your life, for sure.
Definitely. I think that, you know, we live in a society which is very much drummed in that we need to move on and do more and be more and achieve more and go. This kind of, you know, idea is placed upon us. And if you have that type of personality, and I'm one of those people, you know, I used to do a very, very strong Ashtanga practice, an hour and a half every day. And, you know, it was very, very strong. And whilst that served me for a certain time, it wasn't until I started practicing yoga nidra and practices where I did no movement at all that I realized that there was a lot more, or other things which were available to me that weren't so much in that first initial thought of what I thought I needed from a practice.
Yeah, that's really true, isn't it? And I think, yeah, it's not until you start to learn and know yourself, really, that's when you start to tune into that. And I guess that's what we're going to into a little bit more today.
Yeah, definitely.
And about you know, your journey and what you're offering as well to other individuals, to be able to help them to know themselves in all kind of situations and all facets of their life.
Yeah.
So can you give us a bit of an overview, maybe for people who have never encountered yoga before, of what your definition really of yoga is?
How long have you got? I'll try and keep it brief. So I guess when we look at yoga, it's a very vast and broad subject. And there are many things which can come into the word itself, yoga, you know, various practices, whether that be physical meditation or even practices which we take off the mat and do in our daily lives. You know, just trying to be a better human being, being more compassionate to ourselves and others, various other things. An example is, you know, non-greed or non-harming, and just, you know, kind of adopting these sorts of philosophies into our life. But I think for me, really, I would define yoga as a connection and an integration, and being present and cultivating equanimity in the present moment. So I absolutely love this word, and I think it really sums it up, because, you know, as I said, sometimes it's quite difficult to be a human being, and we have a lot of things which happen. I mean, this year, we'll take it as an example, you know, some curveballs are thrown into our lives, and often this can throw us off of our track and make us feel somewhat ungrounded. But yoga really helps you to find that stability through whatever might be happening in our external experience of life. Yeah.
Perfect. I love that. And equanimity is something that I've recently learned about through Buddha's Brain, which was the book that we were speaking about previously, which will come up on in the membership group actually as one of my book recommendations. Now that I've finished it and now that I can actually do a book review on it. But it was talking about the principles of meditation, being able to cultivate that equanimity and really approaching things with no judgment, no opinion. And I think that is almost the opposite of what our culture has encouraged us to become. It's almost encouraged us to have this knee-jerk reaction about every situation, every comment, every discussion, every piece of news. Social media is very much going down that route of encouraging people to have an opinion on everything, and an instant opinion and a knee-jerk reaction with almost no consequence. And I think that is the beautiful thing about all these contemplative practices, where you take the time and where you're slowing down, is, like you said before, you know, our lives are designed to be go all of the time. And that includes our opinions, our judgments on ourselves and on others. Well, and that's exactly what yoga removes.
Exactly. And I was really going to add on there when you just said, you know, this non-judgment. And like you say, we're in this society where we're kind of forced to have an opinion about something, social media. And with the whole yoga thing, it's about a relationship to the self. So we often now, when we're scrolling, we compare, we see and we look and we see all these things. And we can then sometimes, you know, have this negative self-image, or we can be quite harsh to ourselves. Our inner critic is, you know, always there and saying, I could be doing better and I could be doing this, I should be doing this, etc. But, you know, the practice of yoga with these practices that you've just described really take you to a space of being okay with what is and okay with who you are and everything in your whole being, basically.
Yeah, I love that. And I love the fact that there's this whole movement now, almost like away from the asana practice, to kind of say, well, yes, it's great if you can do a headstand, and yes, it's great if you can balance on one arm, but actually that's not what it's all about. It's not about being, amazingly athletic, and that's not the pinnacle of yoga. That's not the sign that you have reached, the highest echelons of yoga. That is just an embodiment of the physical self. And actually, this acceptance of self and this complete comfort with who you are, whether that's a person who solely does yoga nidra or whether that's somebody who spends their whole time in corpse pose, yoga is whatever that means to you. It doesn't necessarily have to be this big athletic display of strength, really.
I agree. And, the physical aspect, the asana portion of yoga, which we're so familiar with, was originally brought over to the West because, it is a spectacle. When you see people doing these crazy postures, it's like, wow, what is this? But really, the physical body is the first way in. It's the easiest and the quickest way to start any kind of other practice. And I think this is why the physical aspect of yoga became so big and still is very big. But you're right, there is a much deeper element to this practice, which I don't think should be dumbed down or missed out at all, because that's the thing that really holds the most power and the most potency and can be really, really useful and helpful. I mean, it's great to move the body, obviously, and be strong and fit and healthy, but it's all the other subtle stuff which really can be life-changing.
Definitely. So speaking of life-changing, what got you into yoga and what kept you coming back?
So I think I toyed around with a few poses. I didn't do much exercise or anything at all when I was growing up or throughout my 20s. And I got introduced to yoga when I was about 25. And I hated it in the beginning. Absolutely hated it. And I really didn't enjoy it. But I was kind of like, forced to do it in a sense. And I thought I'll give it a go. I learned a few poses. And then I incorporated those poses after my gym sessions. I joined the gym and I was just doing those poses afterwards. So I kind of knew that it made my body feel good and it was nice. And that was kind of as far as it went. And I then went to Goa and I did a class there. And I remember the teacher had some quite strict guidelines of what we needed to do before the class. And it was a very profound experience that I had. Within about 40 minutes of the class, it was literally like just something clicked. And I just, in that instant, felt this very profound connection to my entire being, who I was, my past, my feelings, my body, my mind. I was fully present. And I couldn't really quite explain what had happened, but I knew that it was something very, very powerful. And it was the first time that I ever really, truly felt comfortable in myself and who I was. So from that moment on, I was hooked in an instant, because I was like, well, what is this? How has this happened when, I spent most of my life feeling quite uncomfortable with who I was and what I was doing and my experience of life. So yeah, it was quite a quick thing for me. And yeah, here I am, however many years later. So.
Wow. Okay. So what was life like before yoga then?
Life was pretty challenging. I struggled quite a lot when I was younger with my emotions, processing them, experiencing them, and just knowing how to deal with them. I never really got taught the skills to manage my emotions very well. So my life was quite chaotic, internally and externally. And I found a way to manage my emotions that wasn't of great benefit to me. And I started using drugs and alcohol when I was about 14. And I continued in those behavior cycles up until that yoga class that I described to you, really. So yeah, it was really challenging. And I struggled a lot with my relationships with people, and with just bearing myself and just being in my own skin and my daily life. It was really, really tough. Yeah.
Okay. And in terms of how yoga sort of helped you, how do you feel that it helped you through your journey?
So it gave me a focus. It gave me hope, really, I think, to realize that I could change my life, and that I didn't have to just carry on being the way that I was being, or feeling the way that I was feeling. I found something which enabled me to find a sense of comfort in myself. And it became probably a little bit addictive for a while, which, goes hand in hand, because obviously I have that addictive nature. But at least this, for, the first part was a positive addiction. It wasn't a negative, didn't have negative consequences,
Yeah, absolutely. And how would you define addiction now, knowing the differences between the two types of addiction?
So I define addiction in its entirety as suffering, really. It's a state of suffering, and it's a state of not wanting to feel how you feel. And because you don't want to feel how you feel, you act out on that to try and change the way you feel. We can talk a little bit about, neuroscience in my small amount of knowledge that I have. And it's applied science in regards to, what I know about addiction and what I know about yoga and the nervous system and all that kind of stuff. But, so essentially, addiction will arise in a person because generally as a traumatic event. Something traumatic has happened in someone's life, trauma. And then because that experience is so unbearable, that person will become addicted, because the trauma that happens, it changes the way the brain functions and it affects the nervous system. So the nervous system becomes hypervigilant. And what that means is that the amygdala in the brain, which is our emotional brain, it's the limbic brain. So it's our reptilian brain, which is the oldest part of us, really. And that brain is linked to the whole nervous system. And the nervous system is what connects us to everything. It controls our respiratory system, our organs, our hormonal flow, whether we feel good or whether we feel not, whether we're safe or whether we feel stressed out and all that kind of stuff. So the initial trauma that happens affects the nervous system and the brain. You become hypervigilant, and then you're consistently in a state where you're looking for danger. You think that everything around you is a threat, which is, it's justified. It's totally justified, because you've obviously been through something traumatic. So you're thinking that it might happen again, of course. So you get very much stuck in a state of negative thought process about the world around you, who you are. You often blame yourself for the things that may have happened in your life. And then a lot of shame becomes because of that also. So to move away from these negative feelings and to try and re-regulate yourself back to a place of feeling safe, a person will act out. And, addiction isn't limited to drugs and alcohol. This can be, gambling, shopping, food, even just a thought process and process addiction and that kind of thing. So it's a massive, massive subject, really. But yeah, in a short answer, that's how I would define addiction. So yeah, hopefully that makes sense.
I mean, you could go on and do a degree in just addiction. You could go on and really delve straight into the neuroscience of it all. And it's, like you say, it's absolutely huge. It's really complex, and to condense it down into a short answer is quite an art. So well done. How do you feel that yoga particularly is indicated for things like addiction and trauma? How do you feel it benefits?
Well, so for starters, trauma, when a person experiences trauma, although we might, think that the trauma is just in the brain and the thought process, it's not. It happens in the nervous system, and the nervous system holds on to that. on a cellular level, really. You know, it's like the body actually holds on to the trauma. So yoga is a physical practice, and if you're not moving your body or moving the energy in your body, then the trauma that you've experienced won't ever really find a way to heal itself. So just that alone, just doing some sort of physical practice will really help to kind of shift things. You know, if you're very sedentary, then things will just stay the same. You know, it's like, and we're beings where things need to move. We're in constant change all of the time. So just that alone of it being a physical practice is really beneficial. There's also many other things that, you know, we can do with yoga specifically for the nervous system. I'll mention now about the vagus nerve. I'm absolutely in love with the vagus nerve, and it's a fantastic thing. So a scientist, Stephen Porges, coined the term polyvagal theory. And the vagus nerve, just again, I'll try and give you a brief introduction to this. So the vagus nerve is the biggest nerve in the body, and it starts at the face and it runs all the way down the front side of the body. It's connected to our lungs, respiratory system, our organs, again, our hormonal flow, and it's connected to the nervous system. So this nerve has a lot of power, and it really does, you know, it's connected to the parasympathetic nervous system and the sympathetic. So the sympathetic nervous system is our fight or flight mode. So this is when we become stressed or in that hypervigilant state, like I explained earlier, when we're looking for danger. And the parasympathetic nervous system is where the body is much more in balance. So things will be running at a much more, you know, calmer level. The organs will function correctly. The breathing will be at a slower pace, and the whole system will be much calmer. So when a person has experienced trauma or is stressed or anxious a lot, this nerve in the front of the body becomes very contracted. And you may notice if you've felt stressed or anxious before, you know, if somebody has a panic attack, the breathing will increase. You know, this will just automatically happen because the body's response is to move away from danger. And obviously our nervous system doesn't understand whether the danger is real or whether it's perceived, you know. So there's many things which we can do just simply by stretching the front of the body. And this will automatically start to release the vagus nerve. And in turn, that will promote us moving into the parasympathetic nervous system, which is our rest and digest, and just calm the whole system, the body and the mind. Something very, very simple. And this is why I absolutely love it. And I teach these poses now in pretty much every single class, apart from the Ashtanga, because it's just so powerful and it really, really works. And it's so simple, you know, and people can take these tools away and just use them in their daily lives. You know, it's, yeah, it's really good stuff. And then of course you have breath work. So the breathing, whilst this is something which is happening without us even being aware of it, we have the capacity to be able to control the breathing. And if we can control and slow down the breathing, then again, this will slow the body down. It will slow the nervous system down and promote those feelings of calm and well-being as well.
Perfect. And I think not enough is talked about to do with the vagus nerve. I'm also a big fan of it. And really primarily because we are, you know, our culture enforces that we sit in this sympathetic dominance. You know, we are, especially, you know, in the last 12 months or so, constantly bombarded by these messages of fear. We're also, you know, we're fearful for the safety of our families. We're fearful for our jobs a lot of the time. You know, when we're driving, people obviously drive around and cause us to feel fearful of that experience as well. And like you say, as soon as this vagus nerve starts losing its tone, as soon as it stops acting in the way that it's meant to act, i.e. that you've got that nice balance between the sympathetic and the parasympathetic, we start to see issues that are so wide-reaching. So one of the things that I see all the time is that I see incredibly stressed people who have really low stomach acid. Yeah. One of the primary ways of, without using any supplements and without using any foods actually, of increasing that stomach acid production is through doing things like chanting, humming, singing, breath work, all of those
nerves, all vagus nerve.
Yeah, exactly. And, we think of these practices as being really ancient. We think of Buddhist monks chanting, and we think of, breath work, pranayama, as it's known in yoga, but all different kinds of breath work as being quite, being quite out there. Some people might think that they're quite removed from the sort of things that they would do on a day-to-day basis. But even just having a sing-song in the car is something that strengthens the vagus nerve.
Yes, exactly.
And people don't make that association. And I think the more it's talked about and the more people become aware of it, the more we can become in control of our own emotions and the way that our body reacts to situations. Because like you say, the body doesn't know the difference between your boss screaming down the phone at you and being chased by something that's going to kill you.
Yes, exactly.
In exactly the same way.
Yeah.
But stress isn't the surroundings. Stress is the way that your body perceives it to be, and you're in control in some degrees to the way that your body reacts to that. But it's a learnt behaviour. So you have to learn the coping mechanisms, don't you, in order
100%, yeah. And it's like, I just wanted to touch on something because, it's like whilst the vagus nerve acts in this way, it's not wrong. It's trying to keep you alive. That's all it's doing, So it's like going into the sympathetic state is not wrong. That's just what happens. And, it's absolutely okay. But I think what a lot of people do struggle with is finding a way to come back down to baseline and re-regulating, it's like, can you regulate? Do you regulate? That's what my teacher always used to say to me. And it's so true, and it's, if I had known this stuff when I was a teenager, well, my life would have been very, very different. I never would have become a drug addict. It's as simple as that. I would hope not, but, obviously it got me to where I am now. But, just to have those tools and to realize that you do have some, like you say, element of control about how your body responds, or that you can bring yourself back to a level of feeling calm. It's just so powerful, They should be teaching this in schools, and, everybody should know about this. They really should.
Yeah, definitely. And you're absolutely right there. It's not the fact that you're moving into the sympathetic and therefore that's a bad thing. We have to, because it's the way in which our body works. It's constantly flicking back and forth from that parasympathetic to sympathetic and back again. And actually, even in micro moments throughout the day, from our breathing in to our breathing out, it's doing that. But it's this getting stuck in one mode. And it's got such far-reaching effects. And, I see it on people's bloods. They might not even have an appreciation of how stressed they are. They might have now become accustomed to it because they are rushing to get the kids to school, then they're rushing to work, and they don't like their job, and they are afraid of their boss, or they're afraid of losing their job, and then they get home and they're not in a great relationship, or they are pushing, like burning the candle at both ends and going to bed late and getting up early and not fueling themselves right. Or it could be just one or other of those things that we've mentioned, and it shows on the bloods because you can see that person's stressed.
Exactly. And, there's a lot of evidence to suggest now that chronic stress, chronic anxiety will lead to physical disease. I mean, I've experienced this myself. I think that I got to a certain point and I got diagnosed with endometriosis, 5-6 years ago. And I'm pretty certain it was because I'd spent, most of my life in a very, very stressed out state, like you've just described. If anyone's interested, there's a really great book called The Body Keeps the Score by Bessel van der Kolk, I think his name is, which talks about all of this. And Gabor Mate also has done extensive research and written many books about how trauma and, being stressed and anxious equates to physical disease, really. So it's like, we have the choice though, and we can do something about it. And nobody really wants to be stressed out all the time anyway, do they? It's like, is that how we really want to live,
But I think because it's become a badge of honor almost, this busyness has become the thing that we say, isn't it? How are you? Oh yeah, life is busy, I'm really busy.
Yeah, great. Well, I'm like, yeah, it's really good, Yeah.
And if you're not busy, you're lazy, or if you're not busy, you're in some way not achieving in your life. And I think that you're absolutely right. We don't want our bodies to be in that state, because ultimately we want to lead long, healthy, and healthful lives. And you can only carry on in that way for so long until something will stop you in your tracks. And I see it so often. I see people really, really going for it for their whole lives, and they're like, yeah, stress doesn't affect me. I thrive under stress. I do a really stressful job. And then bang, they'll get a diagnosis, hypothyroid, MS, something like that. And it will stop them in their tracks there and then, because the body keeps score, and the body will have its way of making you listen.
Yeah, that's exactly it. And it is. And it's the body saying, it's time now. It's time to listen. It's time to slow down. And, and if you are going at 20 million miles an hour and something like, hypothetically that does happen, you're then in a position where, it might be quite difficult or challenging to be able to provide for the people around you and be present for them and all that kind of stuff. So, it's another thing that there's the kind of stigma about taking time for yourself, that maybe I shouldn't be allowed. I have to do everything for other people first, but really you can't give from an empty cup. So I think we should all take responsibility for looking after number one first, because when you're full up and you have all of this positivity or balance and groundedness and all of that stuff, then you're in a much better position to be able to provide in whatever you're doing, whether that be your job or your family, your friends, or it's just you come from a much more full up place.
Yeah, absolutely. And a less reactive place as well, because we all know what it's like to be incredibly stressed and then to have other demands put on you, even to the point where your children might want some love, or your partner might want to show you affection, and you just don't have the bandwidth because you're absolutely on a knife edge with regards to your nerves.
Yep.
And I've done a series on my Instagram, and the guys in the membership will know that I did a series on my own blood test results, and I already knew what was going to come up when I did my blood tests after leaving my corporate career of near on 18 years. But it told me what I already knew, which was that my body was going, no more. I just can't operate at this level anymore, at this pace anymore. I'm thankful that I've got that opportunity to do that level of testing and to understand exactly what's going on kind of under the bonnet, as I like to call it. But most people won't have that chance until something goes really drastically wrong.
Yeah.
And, then we're forced to then search out for those contemplative practices. And you hear about it all the time, that people, get to a stage where they have to do something. So therefore they start doing yoga, they start doing meditation, they start doing breath work. Mm-hmm. But I think where you and I are probably coming from the same page is that we want people to start considering that before they actually need it.
Yes.
Before their body is telling them that that is the only path to take, because they need to rebuild themselves.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah. And then it needs to be part of, day-to-day life, or even if the actual physical practice is not part of their day-to-day life, the principles and the philosophies, to be able to take that time and to be able to replenish themselves and to be able to tune into themselves and have these coping mechanisms and these strategies. Because, you can't remove all stress from someone's life. It's just not possible. And in fact, people would die if they didn't have some stress, because you need to have that activation. You need to have that driver to, find your own food and to be a better person and all of those things.
Yeah.
But too much, as with anything, too much will be detrimental. And in the long run, it's just not sustainable.
Yeah, I agree. And I come very much from the standpoint that, prevention is the cure. So, the sooner that you can, start to bring these practices into your life, the sooner you'll find the benefit, and then the sooner you'll want to create time for it as well. It's just one of those things, I think, that I see it more and more now. That's one thing that's wonderful about this whole online scenario, is that people are able to practice a lot more. Instead of being able to get to one class a week, they're coming to 3-4 a week, and it's like, once you start to feel the benefit, it will be something which will be incorporated into your life, I think. Why would you not, really? I think.
Self-perpetuating then, isn't it?
Yeah, exactly.
All of those reward pathways, which I'm sure we could go into in loads of detail, because that's also a lovely bit of neuroscience that I love. But We'll dive in now, if we may, into something that I know that you're really passionate about and that you've been immersing yourself in really over the course of the last few weeks and months. So talk to us about the Life Divine.
Yes, this Life Divine. So this is something very, very close to my heart and very exciting. So I'm involved in a brand new 3-day online event, which will be on the 2nd, 3rd and 4th of January this year. And there's a wonderful team of people. I think there might be 11 or 12 of us in total. And we're all very different well, we're all yoga teachers, most of us. There's a few psychotherapists as well. And we've come together to provide and facilitate this 3-day event to help people move through addiction and anxiety behaviors. So there's going to be loads and loads. I think we're starting at like 8 o'clock in the morning and going through to 8 o'clock at night on the 3 days. Yeah, so it's going to be pretty big. But really, you know, we're really passionate about starting a community of people to facilitate change and as somewhat of a support network. So, you know, this won't be the first one. We plan to do this quite regularly. And there's some fantastic expert teachers. And what's wonderful is most of us have also been through hell and back. So, you know, we get it and we're right there with you. And yeah, it's going to be really, really awesome. So, you know, if anyone's interested to check that out, it's thislifedivine.com. If you can't afford to come, then there's also an option where you can attend for free. And we're going to be donating all the profits to 3 addiction charities across the world as well. So yeah, it's really exciting. Yeah.
Amazing cause as well. That's fantastic. It's brilliant to be a part of something so kind of groundbreaking, really, because I guess there's not been anything like that before in the past, has there?
As far as I know, not in this, you know, exact kind of niche. So yeah, I think it's the first of its kind in this sense. So yeah, it's really exciting. It should be a really good 3 days. So yeah.
Fantastic. And what will be the classes that you personally will be offering during the session?
So I'm going to be offering 3. So each day is themed. On the first day, it's acting out behaviors. So I'm going to be doing a class based on the disconnect that we feel as a result of trauma from our bodies. We often can get disassociated. So it's a very simple class based on a series called the Powered Muktasana, which is joint exercise release. So very simple movements just to kind of get people feeling back into the body and to start creating a relationship and sensing the self again. The second class I'll be doing is a Yoga Nidra for addiction. And Yoga Nidra is sleep yoga. Wonderful practice. This is, I mentioned this earlier, you lie there and you don't do anything, but it has quite profound benefits and it's effortless a lot of the time, which is really, really nice. And then the third class I'm doing is a class on the wonder nerve, the vagus nerve. So I'll be talking about the vagus nerve, and leading a class all on that. So you'll leave feeling nice and relaxed, hopefully. So yeah, those are my 3 classes.
I love that. I love that we have a favorite nerve. I didn't know whether we could have one, but we've got one now.
Yes, we definitely have. Yeah.
I'm fascinated. Tell me a bit more about Yoga Nidra. I've experienced it myself and I know a little bit about it, but can you delve into it as to what it is, what somebody would expect, what the benefits are?
Sure. So it's you can describe it as a guided meditation, generally taken lying down. And whilst Yoga Nidra is loosely translated to sleep yoga, that isn't the goal really, but you can fall asleep. You know, it's quite common that people do fall asleep because the body, that's what the body needs, you know, so you can't really practice this incorrectly, which is also fine. And basically you're guided through several aspects. So you'll start with an entry point and you're just arriving into the space to relax the body. And then generally there'll be a body scan. So you'll just listen to each body part and just have to rotate your awareness around the body. And then there are various other sections which you can use, such as awareness of the breath. And there's various things such as counting the breath or using visualization of triangles at various points of the body and other such things. And then there's various other things which you can do in regards to visualization, this, that, and the other. But, you know, it's a wonderful practice. It works very much in the brain. And you're guided through so that the brain actually moves through all the different brainwave states. So it's much like a sleep cycle, which has a massive amount of benefit. You know, if you're someone that doesn't sleep very well, then you might know that you feel very tired and quite unrested the next day. But a session of yoga nidra, I think they say that 30 minutes could be as beneficial as 6 hours of sleep. And you can feel very, very recharged afterwards. And whilst, you know, it does help with your natural sleep as well, it also helps with emotional regulation and this sense of non-judgment, again, like we've spoken about earlier. And, you know, you can have some profound healing through these practices. The body just feels very, very rested. And, you know, it's just wonderful. I, again, urge everyone to try it. I'm obviously biased because I love this stuff and it's changed my life. But, you know, give it a go and see what happens. It's an exploration of consciousness, and it can be a lot of fun.
Love it. And being I think they call it a somnambulistic person. So I'm apparently very easy to hypnotize.
Okay, yeah.
The yoga nidra really, really easily.
Yeah.
Sometimes you can be in it and you can come out of it and you can be like, did I fall asleep or not? But actually you remember all the aspects of it. So it's almost like being hypnotized, I guess, because you can hear all the words, but you're so deeply relaxed that you almost can't react to any of the words. So they kind of just wash over you is the way that I'd describe it.
Exactly. And, you know, it's more about being as opposed to thinking and doing. So it's about kind of having this awareness that you're present, but just allowing whatever happens to happen. So there's one particular part which is just like the free flow state where you'll just watch the space behind the eyelids, and it's often here that you might get presented with images or lights or anything at all, really. And it's much like a dream-like state. I often come back and I feel like I've had a dream, but I've been conscious whilst it's happening. So it's it's very interesting. It's you know, like I say, a lot of fun to play with, and there are loads of benefits to it. So yeah, it's good.
Yeah, there's something just about switching the mind off and allowing somebody else to almost like guide you through that process, and you not have to think or be, or well, think or do, but just be.
Yes.
For that period of time, that's almost like, I guess I can describe it as a bath for the brain. It's when you come out of it, you feel like your brain has been kind of cleansed of all of the chitter chatter that goes on throughout the day.
Yeah, that's a really, really lovely way of looking at it. And I would definitely agree. It very much allows you to quieten the mind. And what did you describe it as? A brain. Yeah, that's fantastic. I love that.
That's the way my mind works.
Yeah, no, you're absolutely right.
In your classes and you know, listen to your voice during the shavasana at the end. You have to have a certain voice, don't you, to do the yoga nidra, I think. And it's tuning into the cadence of the way in which you speak. Is there a particular way in which they teach you, or is it just your own vibe and your own style?
There are there are various different schools of yoga nidra. So each school has a different aspect where they come from and how they do the practice. In regards to teaching, I mean, I was taught really well, and you know, there's some things which are advised to follow, but you can be really creative with it, you know, and you can take it wherever you want to it in some regards. But I stick quite traditionally to one particular school, but that's just because that was my practice itself, you know. So we tend to always teach what we've learned ourselves, because that's what we know, and it's kind of ingrained in us. Yeah. But in regards to the voice, though, I mean, again, I think that comes just down to your personal preference, and if one teacher will resonate with another student and vice versa. So, you know, yeah.
Well, it's good because you've got the right voice for it. So there you go.
I think I do put a bit of a voice on, to be honest, my yoga nidra voice.
I like it, though. I like it. And I think it's very much like if you speak to a hypnotherapist and you speak with a hypnotherapist for a chat, Then you go and have a session with them, they have a different voice for the hypnotherapy.
Yeah.
And I guess you have to. I guess
you do. Of course you do. Yes, because, if you're trying to really facilitate a space where a practitioner is trying to calm and be in a safe space where they can really relax, you don't want to be like, okay, focus on the right hand and the left elbow, it's like, that's just not going to work, it's just not going to do what you want it to do.
Are you saying that I don't have the voice for Yoga Nidra?
Oh, of course not. Not at all. No. I think you do have a voice for Yoga Nidra, but you get into the character, I suppose. It's one of those things of life where we play all these different roles, isn't it? So
yeah, I love it. It's like you say, it's a really powerful practice. It's a great way to spend, however long you've got to do the session. I mean, is there a prescribed amount of time that's like a minimum to go through the whole cycle?
Well, not so much. I mean, because they say you can practice anywhere from 10 minutes to 45 normally, but some practices go longer, 2-3 hours. I mean, I'm not that advanced myself. But I'd say, 25 minutes, 30 minutes is kind of good. But again, it also depends on the teacher. So you might not do all aspects of the sections which I explained, and some nidras might just be body scan. Some might be body scan and something else. Generally, most nidras will have a body scan because that's the easiest way to get the body into a very relaxed state. But yeah, 20 minutes, 25 minutes. I mean, I think I've got one on my website, which is 12 minutes. I think it's called Better Than a Power Nap. So, if anyone wants to check that out as an introductory, go ahead.
Yeah, I was going to say, actually, did you want to talk about your one that's on the website? Because that's a great way for people to experience, I think.
It is, yeah.
Brilliant way to spend 25 minutes because, like you say, you could go for a nap, but this is going to give you a whole load of other benefits, and it's like a bath for your brain. So what more can you want?
Exactly. And you haven't got to do anything or get wet or get a sponge. You just lie down. Like, it's so simple.
Yeah, and put yourself in someone else's hands. Exactly.
Yeah, exactly. And, like we said, we live in a very fast-paced world, and I think we do, as a society, as humanity, need to slow down. And there's so much to be experienced in the vastness of nothing if you just allow yourself the space to look, Yeah,
and I think as well, for a lot of us, it's really important to realize that that space inside our head is a really safe space.
Yeah. I think for a lot of people it isn't, though, but it can be, and it's, like you say, it's about learning how that can be a safe space.
100%. And, yoga nidra, and all of the contemplative practices that we've kind of touched upon tonight are a really great entry point to being able to harness that and being able to feel that and having that peaceful area within ourselves, for sure.
Yeah, definitely.
Perfect. Well, tonight's been amazing. Thank you so much, Sada. Thank you for joining us, and thanks for spending the time. I could literally talk to you for hours about all of the aspects. We've only really scratched the surface, haven't we?
Yeah, I really appreciate you having me on, and I've thoroughly enjoyed our conversation. Thank you very much.
It's a pleasure. And just remind us where we can find you if you want to find out more about This Life Divine, more about you, your classes, your Yoga Nidra, where we can follow you on socials.
Sure. So again, my website is sadayoga.co.uk. That's just spelled SADA. And then there's links and everything on there. So the Yoga Nidras are on the page. Thislifedivine.com. That can be accessed through my site, or you can go to the site directly. And then, Facebook, Instagram is Sada Yoga UK.
Perfect. Thank you so much.
Thank you. It's been a pleasure.
Really appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you. See you soon.